touch me, you feel me, you get me, it's true. I know that you know that I know it's you. For the first time and the last time, hopefully forever, I hope. For the first time and the last time, forever and ever, I know.
Hi there and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about some of my favourite books. This was requested by Alva. Hello Alva, and Alva is a very good friend of my mum's, and I think that she's really missing her kind of coffee catch-ups with mum at the minute because of this lockdown, and she's asked for some books to read. So how I've picked these favourite books is I just went into my Goodreads account and I looked up, my sort of the books where I had rated it 5-star, and I've made a note of some of them. There's probably loads of other books that are favourites of mine from years ago, but these are sort of in the most recent kind of last couple of years. Okay, the first book I want to talk about is Room by Emma Donoghue, and probably a lot of you will have read this. I don't know if Alva has read this yet, but it is a fantastic book. It was made into a film, and the film was very good as well. And this book came out years ago, and I remember when it first came out, and it was like on bestseller tables and things, and I read the description of it and I thought, oh, I don't like the sound of that. It's about a boy that's trapped in a room with his mother, and I thought, oh dear, that sounds really stifling and claustrophobic, and I didn't read it. I put off reading it, and then months and months and months and months later, my sister Debbie was raving about it, and she said, no, it's really good, honestly, it's really good. And then it popped up on my Audible daily deal, so I thought, well, I'll give it a go, and I absolutely loved it. I remember when I started reading it, and I was supposed to, it was one Sunday and I was supposed to get some writing done, and I didn't do any writing. I just sat and listened to this book all day until I finished it at 11:30 that night. It was really gripping, real page turner, loads of suspense, and also the character of the little boy, he was just such a wee dote, and I think because we were seeing the story through his eyes, it didn't seem as tragic. I think if we had been seeing the story through the eyes of the mother, it might have been really depressing, but because the boy was he was actually kind of blissfully unaware of the situation that he was in, it kind of made it more tolerable. So that was a great book. You've got to read that one. So the next book that I want to talk about is called Eleanor, Oliphant is Completely Fine, and it is by Gail Honeyman, and you'll have seen a picture on the screen. This was another wonderful book that I just couldn't put down. It was actually one of those books that I was reading thinking, I'm dying to find out what happens, but I don't want this book to end, because I knew that when the book finished, I'd struggle to find another good book for a while. I would have a book hangover. I don't know if you've ever had a book hangover, but I've had a book hangover where you're absolutely loving a book, and then it's over, and then you're like, oh no, what am I going to do with myself now? And then you might start another book and you might not get into it, and yeah. If you've had a book hangover, you'll know what I mean. But this character of Eleanor Oliphant is she's a bit strange, but she's so fascinating and so likable, and you just really warm to her. And this book it covers subjects like loneliness and depression, but it manages to do it in a way that doesn't feel too heavy. There's lots of humour along the way, And Eleanor becomes very friendly with this guy Raymond, and their relationship is just fascinating. So it's very kind of character driven book, called Sister Sister by Sue Fortin. This was another book that I just couldn't put down. I gobbled it up in a few days, and it was one of those books where I'd be sitting at work thinking, I can't wait until I finish work so I can get on with that book. And it's about two sisters, and they're both very different. One of them, Alice, is really beautiful, a bit manipulative, and the other one, Claire, is a bit sort of jealous and paranoid. And it was just really fascinating to watch their sort of sibling relationship. And I think Sue Fortin tackled really well the whole subject of kind of jealousy and insecurity, and how it can affect people's actions, and then those actions have got repercussions. And it was one of those books that just had loads of twists and turns, and you know, and a book where the characters just kind of jumped off the page and you could picture each scene really, really clearly. So that was another one that I loved, a really great fictional story, kind of verging on, well, it was psychological thriller, sort of domestic drama, so plenty of twists and turns, will keep you on your toes. So that's another good one. Okay, the next book I want to talk to you about is called I Let You Go by Claire McIntosh. And it was quite a while ago actually that I read this one, but I remember loving it at the time. And I remember that there's kind of, I think from memory, there's a couple of different point of views, and when the woman is narrating, I remember thinking that it was a really creepy voice, but really effective. And it starts off with a really dramatic scene, and there's been this car accident, and we don't know who's caused the accident, and then there's a lot about this sort of police world, and the author, Claire McIntosh, has worked in the police herself, so you can tell that she kind of knows that world inside out, and it's really good descriptions of it all and everything. And the thing about this novel is it does touch on domestic violence, which is quite hard to read, but at the same time it's still a really tense novel, and one that will just keep you turning the pages, and a fantastic ending, and well worth a read as well. So that's the next one. Hiya. So the next book that I want to recommend is called The Suspects by Katherine Johnson. And oh my goodness, I loved this book. It reminded me of that film Shallow Grave, and it's about these university students that buy a house together, and then they find a body in the basement, and basically it's how they kind of deal with that. And oh my goodness, it was just amazing. I just couldn't put it down. I really couldn't. I was sitting up to 1:30 in the morning reading it. And I think it's because it kind of took me back to my university days. Not that we ever had, you know, a body in the basement or anything, but just that whole flat sharing thing. And the writer really described really well the relationships between people when you're flat sharing, and all the grievances and things. But then added to that, the pressure of this incident downstairs and how they cope with it all was just fascinating. And there's one part where they have to make this car journey, and honestly, my heart was in my mouth. I was just like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? So I couldn't put it down, and I've been recommending it to everyone. So highly recommend that one, The Suspects. Okay, so the next book is called The Innocent Wife by Amy Lloyd. And this book was her debut novel, and she won like a Daily Mail competition for it and won a load of money. And for her first novel, it is fantastic. And it's about a guy that's on death row, and they do a documentary on him, and it kind of reminded me of The Iceman and Richard Kokinski, because there was loads of documentaries done on him, and he apparently had all these women writing to him and fan mail and everything. And so this novel is about a woman who starts writing to this guy on death row, and throughout their letters they fall in love, and then she goes to meet him, and it's kind of all about their relationship. And I think the thing that I found fascinating about it was the way the characters were depicted. Like, it was very realistic, the way that she was very timid and very insecure, and you could kind of see why she kind of got pulled into all of this. And so the writer's has been able to depict sort of flawed characters very, very well, and yet you're kind of rooting for them, and you kind of want to know what's going to happen. And it's just basically about what happens with them and their relationship whilst he's on death row. And there's a whole lot more besides to it, but if I say any more, I'll give a spoiler. But suffice to say, it won this competition and it is fantastic. So that's another one to read. And it is about the two main characters are a woman, Mel and Abby. They haven't seen each other for years, and one of them is needing a bit of help, and the other one lets her come and stay, invites her in, and that's a huge mistake. And it's a really scandalous novel. That's all I can say. And also the things that you think are going to happen, it doesn't happen. It's completely surprising what happens and how the story unfolds. I think this book was kind of listed as a psychological thriller, but I think it's more of a domestic drama. It didn't feel scary or anything, and it was actually really funny in places. But it's just a real page turner, and there's loads of twists and turns, and a really good portrayal of female relationships. So yeah, that's another one that's definitely worth. It's called The Fear, and it is by C.L. Taylor, and it's about a woman called Lou. And Lou was involved with this guy Mike years and years and years ago, and they come into contact with each other again. And it turns out that Mike is seeing a 14-year-old girl called Chloe. And when Lou had been seeing Mike, she was 14. So obviously this guy is a paedophile. And Lou is kind of going about trying to get him brought to justice. But things do not go according to plan. So another very sort of twisty novel, loads of twists and turns and loads of tension and real page turner, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I could sort of visualise everything really clearly, what was happening, and the characters just came to life really well. Is Her Name Was Rose by Claire Allen, and this was a psychological thriller. And I think it was the first psychological thriller that this author had written, but she'd written like about 10 romance women's fiction novels before that, and she'd made the genre jump. And this book is set in Derry, so Alva might enjoy that because she's down near that area. And there's loads of like street names in Derry and places that I recognised. But this book is very much about that whole social media presence and the kind of image that people portray on social media, and it might not, and it probably isn't how their life is at all. And that whole thing of like, is the grass greener on the other side, and is that person having a wonderful life really, or is it just what they're portraying? And it was a book that just kept moving along, and when you'd think that something was going to happen, or you'd think, oh, that person did that, then something would happen to make you to completely turn it on its head, and so, you know, you'd be just completely surprised all the time, and it's a real page turner. So and there was a bit of sort of romance and dating in this book as well. You know, even though it was a psychological thriller, there was some dating which was nice, which I really enjoyed. So I really loved that one as well. So that's my 10 favourites. I'm sure I have plenty more favourites, but Alva, that is some reading to keep you going during the lockdown, and I hope that you enjoy them and let me know what you think of them. And that's all from me, and thank you for watching. Bye.
You touch me, you feel me, you get me, it's true.